Brilliant, Joe. Fantastic. Love that, mate. So, my name's Sean Bailey. I'm here today representing the Lived Experience Network. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here and also represent a network of people like myself have had issues with their mental health but want to make change. It's super duper important. I've been tasked to talk to you today about mental health within men and emotional well-being. To give you some experiences of my journey and also what helps me. So I've basically got 4 bullet points that I'm going to use as cues. My journey started, I was raised 10 miles up the road that way, and I lived 10 miles that way. 10 miles that way, it is completely different in Newton Willows than it is 10 miles this way in terms of culture regarding mental health, attitudes, especially in men around mental health, and talking about it. You just didn't talk about it. We were brought up in Newton Willows. There used to be a hospital down the road. Some of you will probably know about it, called Winnick. It's now a beautiful housing estate. As a young person growing up in Newton Willows, you were told that if you misbehaved, you were sent to Winnick. And it was so scary. It was like a castle. That created automatic stigma. As I grew up, I broke my neck when I was 22. I was told I was never going to walk again. I lived in hospital for 7 months in a spinal injuries unit in Oswestry. 9-hour surgery, 3-day coma, 7 months as a resident at the Robert Jones and Agnes Hunt Hospital. Came out, not once did anybody ask me about how I felt in terms of emotional needs. I was an able-bodied individual at 21. 2 days later, I was disabled and having to adapt to a completely new life. Completely new life. But in Newton Willows, there was 28 pubs in a 3-mile radius. There was also a pre-existing stigma around Winnick Hospital that you just did not talk about it, no matter how you felt. Now, my lived experience is around addiction, a suicide attempt, are all stemming from post-traumatic stress disorder, from breaking my neck. So what happened with me, I started to have flashbacks of the impact of my injury, the smell, the heat. I went to the GP. My signpost was the traditional counselling route. Have these tablets. I was already taking 15 tablets a day at the time. I didn't want to be taking any more, so I knocked that. I just acknowledged it and said, I don't want to do that. Went into the counselling sessions. It wasn't for me. So I continued within this substance misuse, alcohol, drugs, which led to an attempt of taking my own life. We didn't talk about it. Nobody knew about it. I just kept it hidden. Didn't talk about PTSD. You didn't do it where we lived. You were weak. And that stigma still exists today. You are perceived as weak. You are perceived as not the breadwinner, reflected on Joe's slide, that you cannot cope. And that is not just in communities. That's in business. That's in education. That's in workplaces. Now, for me, I guess my recovery started when I moved 10 miles that way. I was recovered from spinal cord injury, or I'm constantly recovering from spinal cord injury, even today. It's been nearly 20 years. But my mental health recovery, I sacked the counselling off. That weren't for me. When I was going in there, I was just lying to get out. I didn't want to be there. So I accessed something called, through Change, Grow, Live, CGL. Went into there. The courage it took for me to just walk in. I spent 15 minutes sat outside in my car just to walk in. Then when I walked in, there was a reception there. This was in Widnes. I didn't know what I was asking for. I didn't know what help I needed. I just said, look, this is my situation. What do I do? He said, I've got the help for you tonight, Sean. There's a guy who's just walked in. I'll get him in now. So that night, I went to a church, to one of the anonymous programs, and for the first time in my life, I said, my name's Sean, I'm an addict. I didn't relate to being an addict. I didn't relate to having an addiction. But that was the most liberating experience of my life, to listen to other people, talk about their experiences, knowing that I was not the only person that is or are experiencing the journey that I was on in terms of my addictive behaviours. Granted, none of them had broke the net playing sport, and everybody's addictions were different. People were using different substances, but we all had commonality, and you almost became part of a community. Now, in terms of the recovery, in those rooms, you typically get passed into the 12 steps program. Again, I started that, it wasn't for me. I needed something else. And I thought, where have I recovered before? What can I tag on to this 12 steps program? Oh, you broke your neck. You did a few things there that got you through that process, despite being told you're never going to walk again. So I tasked and tagged those behaviours, those actions onto my 12 steps recovery. Looking at exercise for more than just going to the gym and taking a selfie in Pure Gym and pretending to know how to deadlift. I looked at getting quality sleep, more than 7 hours, something that we completely take for granted. I looked at food. What am I eating? Monday night after a weekend or 4 days of not going to sleep, you were just eating diabolical food, not knowing the effect that it has on your emotional state. Micro behaviours, things that we take advantage of, or we don't appreciate that we do day to day. What we eat, how we sleep, how we move, how do we hydrate? How does that affect my emotional well-being? And as I started this process of recovery, focusing on those 4 areas of sleep, movement, food, hydration, I started to thrive. My job profile, my salary, everything changed. Everything changed. And that gave me the courage and confidence to talk about it. And this leads me into changing our behaviours and attitudes. Our attitude towards sleep, our attitude towards our nutrition, our attitude towards exercise, our attitude towards hydration, our attitude towards being resilient. All those things contribute to better and greater resilience. If you're not getting 7 hours sleep plus a night, and I bet if I asked the question now, hands up if you got 7 hours sleep last night, about 50% of the room would not have their hand up. That impacts our emotional health every single day. Now, until we start changing our attitude on things like sleep, last week I was in a workplace delivering a workshop on sleep. 65% of the workforce were getting under 6 hours sleep. And that organisation was expecting those people to come into work the next day and thrive and be productive and have energy, be efficient with their work. It just doesn't happen. It just does not happen. So until we start changing our behaviours in places like Newton le Willows, in places like Halton, until we start changing our attitudes to those behaviours, nothing will change. And that leads us into how we progress. Hope, action. One thing I use every single day with my children is something called the self principle. And the self principle stands for sleep, exercise, leisure, and food. If you want to protect yourself, if you want to start to thrive, if you want to lead a healthier lifestyle, that's what we all want when we're talking about suicide. People's health has got to a really challenging state that they feel there is no way out. We look at something from the self principle. Can we get better sleep tonight? Can we eat just a slightly little bit better? Something as simple as just an apple. Can we get a bit of exercise? Doesn't it have to be signing up to the gym and doing a marathon or doing your best bench press or whatever it is? Can we have a bit of fun in our lives? Then we can start making better change in terms of men's emotional health, physical health, which hopefully will lead to reductions in suicide. Thank you very much, because I'm getting the sign.